Hello and welcome to this DSM Forward event. The event is sponsored by the Greatest Point Partnership and it's part of our DSM Forward series. Our goal is to help businesses and community members connect, share, and exchange information and resources related to moving forward in this next phase of reopening. Partnerships created a series of published series of industry playbooks, business playbooks, FAQs, and other resources that are available to you on our website at dsmpartnership.com/DSM Forward. We hope these resources, in addition to this series, is helpful to you. And today, something I've been looking forward to for a long time, I'm joined by Ann Schmerdla and Amanda Newsom of the Blank Park Zoo. Welcome, both of you. Just a few logistics things before we get started. First of all, to all the guests, thank you for joining us. If you would, just mute your microphones, turn off your video, and open up the chat window. That's what we'll be using to ask questions today. And I really encourage you to to ask some questions here. We'd like to have this be as interactive as we can. So with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you would, maybe I'll just have both of you introduce yourselves, and we'll go from here.
Okay. My name is Ann Schmerdla, and I'm the President and CEO at the Blank Park Zoo, and I'm the new president. I just started on June 1st. Prior to this, I've been at the zoo. I was the Chief Operating Officer, and I've been at the zoo for about 24 years.
Yes, I'm Amanda Newsom. I am our Vice President and Chief Development Officer, and I've been here at the zoo for a little over 2.5 years. Excuse me, and so I assist Ann with overall management of the zoo, but then for the kind of CDO portion of what I do, I oversee all of our membership, annual giving and campaign, so all donations to the zoo, as well as our public and private events.
So for those of you who weren't registered the first time, we had actually planned on having this, I believe, on the 11th of August. Is that correct? It was the day that the storm came through, and we ended up canceling that day. As you can imagine, there was a lot of damage, the derecho. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about how that storm affected you, since it blew right through Des Moines.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting day. So we're actually very weather aware at the zoo because we have animals to protect as well as people that are here. So our emergency procedures, we practice our emergency procedures for all different scenarios, and they went into effect that day. So our zookeepers went through and they opened up all the doors for all the animals to get inside, and I'm happy to report that all of our animals did make it inside. My screen just blanked out. Anyway, I'm happy to report that all of our animals did make it inside and were safe. That we also have procedures for our general public and safe places to move people, and everybody was moved safely and rode out the storm together. And then we had summer camp here as well. So we also worked to get our summer camp kids. We have a safe place already designated there as part of our emergency procedures. So they hunkered down and watched a movie. I don't think our camp kids even knew the storm was going on because they were in of our Discovery Center. So that was a good thing. And then just communicating with parents so they know that everybody was safe. On the zoo grounds, unfortunately, we did lose quite a bit of trees, and we did have damage throughout our grounds. So we did have to close down the rest of that afternoon to start our cleanup efforts. So we had trees and branches down all over. We did have...
Oh, we just lost our sound there.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go. Now you're back.
Okay, my computer screen kind of blipped out, so I apologize. But
it's okay.
So we did have some damage to some of our fences, particularly in our Africa area, and then we did lose part of a roof on one of our barns. Fortunately, the animals inside were fine because it was just the shingles, the top part of the roof, so they were okay that were inside. But so yeah, it was an interesting day, and like I said, this is why we practice emergency procedures regularly.
Yeah, I think we all got a real dose of this reality here this year. So I've got to ask, and then we'll start talking about what's going on in the future, but how did COVID-19 change the zoo operations, personnel, all the things you deal with, and especially how does this affect the animals?
Sure. Yeah. So just like many organizations, I mean, COVID has had a huge impact on our budget and our operations, for the year. So we are running at about 50% capacity right now. So we were closed for 65 days. We are a nonprofit, and it costs about $19,000 a day to operate the zoo. And so we rely on those admission fees and membership fees to cover our expenses. So we had to make, some cuts. Some of the things that we have to think about are we cut about 30% of our budget, but we can't cut animal feed, we can't cut veterinary expenses, we can't cut utilities. We have about 30 buildings that our animals live in, so those are things where expenses are pretty much set. So we looked at different ways, of building revenue. Right now we're looking at about $1 million loss for the year. But our operations, and we are open, and one of our challenges that we started immediately back in March when all of this started happening, we put together our emergency response team, and we've been meeting, we met, at that time, we were meeting twice a week, if not more often, just to make sure that we were staying up to date. We watched all the press conferences, and, we're getting information from other zoos across the country, from our national association, as well as other organizations, and looked at what we can do to move forward. We put together a 3-phase plan of a closure, basically, of the zoo. And when it was time to reopen, we looked at how we can do it in the most responsible manner. So how can we bring guests back to the zoo so that we can meet guests where they are, as far as safety procedures and protocols, and as well as keeping our animals healthy as well. So some of the modifications that you saw were, again, we have a limited capacity. We still are operating on about a 50% capacity. We did start with time tickets at first, and we have eliminated the time ticket system. That was pretty cumbersome on people, and so we decided to go ahead and eliminate that. You'll see plex barriers when you come to the zoo, where we normally wouldn't have those. We do have one-way pass around some of the in some of the exhibit areas, and then we do require, all of our staff are required to wear masks, and then we are requiring masks according to the mayor's recent declaration of people in the zoo. So any indoor spaces, people wear masks. Outdoors, you're required to have masks when you cannot social distance. So making sure that groups part, yeah. So just kind of making sure that, all of those things, like I said, we work to make sure those are done responsibly. When we are looking at expenses, again, we can't cut animal feed, we can't cut vet, expenses. I mean, that's part of our responsibility, and our priority is always our animals, and so what we can do to maintain a high quality of animal care. We did do a 20% reduction in hours from the top down, so every single staff member did have a reduction in hours, and then we had people that were reassigned jobs all over to make sure that our animals were cared for. So our education team and our events team got to learn how to take care of some of the animals, and I got to go back to my roots and remember how to clean a stall and feed the tortoise and stuff like that. So that was something that we all pulled together as a team and really worked hard to make sure that our animals were our priorities.
So during the time you were actually closed, how did you stay engaged with your members and the public?
Yeah, I would say that that's something that we love to share, because we're actually really proud of how we were kind of able to jump right into that. So literally right away, we took to social media in a much grander way than we ever had before. We've always had a social media presence, but we really upped the ante quite a bit. We kind of got together and wrote out a huge list of things that we can do on the board and got to work. So anything from increasing or even just starting Facebook Live programming for any of you that are a part of this that maybe have children, and maybe you're home with children, maybe you still are. We did a Zoo Creates every single day at the same time, because we know how important it is to keep that structure and keep a schedule. And so our education team was on there each and every day doing some sort of craft that utilized things that you would have in the home. You don't have to necessarily go out and buy, but that are already there, and tied that into some sort of information about a species or information about a habitat or animal habits or things like that. So it really was an educational moment. We started programs like our Zoom program, where on days such as today, when you guys are all getting together, you could also, for a slight fee, have one of our animals come and join your Zoom program. And so we've had...
That'd be a lot of fun. Do you have any good stories about that?
They really are. And anything from, you know, a llama to a rhino to, I mean, most of our animals are able to Zoom, believe it or not. So that's been a really fun program, and it doesn't bring in a ton of money, but it's one way that we were able to diversify. We have early childhood virtual classes now, and, you know, virtual animal show and tells, increased our presence on Facebook just with getting creative with some of our memes. We did some really kind of comical memes during that time. Still trying to do that. But then also adding a lot of our video content, you know, talking with our keepers, sharing our animals and what they're doing each day. We did live feeds from, you know, our aquariums to giraffe, so that people had a place to go and see our animals in real time. Nice. Some of you may remember our Zoo Lights event that we put on, where we kind of took a lot of our Night Eyes displays and lights, as well as a ton of signage, and took out the cones and the roping so that we had kind of a one-way path through our parking lot for cars to go. During the time that we were closed, we did that on several weekends. And so just a few of us staff got our families together, since we really couldn't intermingle a lot with each other. Our families would come and support and be out there in, you know, our wallaby costume or just out there waving. But it was an opportunity for us to engage with the community. People really weren't able to go out and do a whole lot, but this was something that you could do in a very responsible way. So we had a lot of signage up about our mission, about our animals, you know, saying that our animals miss the people and we miss the people, and so that was a really, really fun experience. And then with our members, we continued to keep good contact with them. We do a weekly email, an e-blast to all of our members anyway, so we continued to do that and make sure that we were updating them on where we were at, you know, what we were doing to continue to care for the animals in a great way. So yeah, as far as, you know, engaging with the community, engaging with our members, reaching out to our donors, definitely upped the ante a little bit and tried to do exponentially more than what we'd ever done before.
What was the response like? I mean, how you talked about social media and people, you know, trying to engage on social media. Has that been effective for you?
It was, quite honestly, it was overwhelming to us.
Good.
And our chief marketing officer, if he was in here, he would have all the numbers for you, the stats and all of that. But our followers, the feedback, the comments, everything increased tremendously. And with the Zoo Lights events, those were just extremely touching for us to see. We were expecting, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred cars or something, and in that first weekend we had 3,000. 3,000 came in on that one weekend. Oh yeah, we had the traffic blocked in both directions for quite a while. But I will say that we were responsible. We were in contact with the Des Moines police throughout the whole thing, and they were actually quite funny. They said, "It's absolutely fine. You're doing a great thing for the community. Nobody has anywhere to go and be anyway, so you just keep going." But it was really special to us because we were out there just wanting to kind of touch people in a different way, whether they had ever been to the zoo or not, whether they were members or not. And, you know, we had the signs saying, "We miss you," and people were kind of rolling down their windows and yelling at us, "We missed you too." So it was really special.
Yeah. As a staff member working that weekend, it was really fun, and it kind of warmed your heart and gave us a lot of energy. You know, of course, our whole operations and our whole jobs are flipped upside down, and so to be able to, you know, have that experience with people in a different way was really energizing and inspiring. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's amazing that you had 3,000 people show up the first weekend. That really tells you a lot about our community. Mm-hmm. There's been some articles recently about how animals are affected by COVID-19. Has there been an impact at Blank Park Zoo by this issue?
So we haven't had any animals that have tested positive. However, that is always top of mind for us, and so that's something that we keep a close eye on. We are in contact with zoos across the country, and when the first articles came out where the tiger and lions tested positive at the Bronx Zoo, their veterinarian was in contact with our veterinarian, and we're fortunate to have a network of zoo professionals that we all reach each other and communicate on a regular basis. So having that information ahead of time and being able to address that was really important. So we looked at and went through every single animal in our collection and evaluated what is the risk assessment for those animals, and are they susceptible to COVID or not. So certain species were identified, like the cats, the otters, ferrets, and then of course any primates. So like our Japanese macaques, our gibbons, our tamarins that are in the Discovery Center. And then we looked at what we would have to do to make sure that people are at least 10 feet back from those individuals. So we looked at not only our public viewing areas. And so, for example, in our Japanese macaque area, we have barriers up so that people have to stay back. They can't go right up on the view decks, which is unfortunate that you can't get as close as normal, but at the same time, we want to make sure that those animals are healthy as well. And everybody that I've interacted with when we explain that is very understanding of those procedures. We have some plex up in areas like in our Discovery Center by our tamarins, just so you can still see the animals, but again, they have that extra layer of support and protection for them. Then we also worked on our internal procedures as well. So we always use different forms of personal protective equipment when we're around the animals, but we looked at additional masks, gloves, and what other procedures that we need to do as staff to make sure that we are not passing something on to any of our animals inadvertently. So that's always something very interesting. And then we also need to care for not only just the health of the animals, but also their mental health of the animals. And I will say that animals miss people, when they were here. So our staff does a great job. We have a regular enrichment schedule that we work on. Every single animal gets some kind of mental stimulation, or we call it enrichment, every single day. But it's not the same when people aren't around, and so you can kind of tell that they really, kind of miss people. On our first day open, they were really curious when people started coming back, and so it was really fun to see that reaction. It was almost like they were kind of giddy in a way. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of us who were stuck inside for many weeks, when they finally first went out, it's like, wow, this is great. So I can totally understand that. You've had a lot of volunteers over the years, and people get involved. Tell me more about what's going on with whether it's volunteers or how can people get involved with the zoo going forward? I've got to believe there's a lot of different places.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we have volunteers in pretty much all areas of the zoo, and the best place to go is on our website. So it's blankparkzoo.com. And there is a section on volunteering there, but we have volunteers ages 13 through adults. And so our Zoo Crew program, we were really excited. We have a program for 13 to 17-year-olds, and they do work throughout the summer months. And we were a little worried that maybe they wouldn't be able to get to work this summer. And we had 190 kids signed up for the program this year. And so we were able to quickly switch, and they did all of their application process online. They did all of their training virtually this year, which was completely new. So our volunteer managers did a great job of flipping what we normally do and moving that, online. The kids, paid attention to that. And then they were able to, starting in July, come in and sign up for shifts at the zoo. So they work in some of our animal areas and provide information, answer questions for guests that come. They help down at our train and our carousel. We had extra cleaning procedures in place, so they helped do some of those extra cleaning procedures. So it was really kind of fun to see those kids back here this summer. And then our adult volunteers work in all different areas from our special events, and Amanda can talk a little bit about what they do in events, again, in our different animal areas. And they were really itching to come back as well, and we're excited to have them back online as well.
I was going to say, some of our volunteers that have been doing this for years, they missed it so much that they were calling us on a daily basis. When can I come back? When can volunteers start again? And so they were super excited. But as far as the community getting involved, there's a lot of different opportunities, anything from volunteering to, I mean, I would be remiss in doing what I do for a living if I didn't say you could donate to the zoo. It's kind of my job. But there is that, and there is a huge need for that. But then for those that are comfortable, especially after hearing, hopefully, some of the things that we put into place, just coming to the zoo. You know, the more people that we can get through our doors safely, the better it's going to be for us towards the end of the year when we are facing, as Ann mentioned, that $1 million deficit. Participating in our events. You know, we have events coming up. We have an event coming up on Saturday. Our Walk to Save Animals is happening on Saturday, and you can walk here at the zoo, or you can also sign up to do it virtually. And that's a new event. We chose, you know, the year of COVID to start a new event, as most would, right? But adding that virtual component makes it, you know, feasible for anyone. And we have someone in California that's going to be virtually walking with us. So we're really, you know, excited about that. We're in the thick of planning our gala on October 3rd, which is a virtual event that does not cost a thing. So everybody on this call and beyond can join us for that. And that will be really, really, really cool with a lot of insight into the behind-the-scenes things that take place here at the zoo. We're really looking forward to that. We're also in the thick of Night Eyes planning. It's going to look a lot different, but we are, you know, full steam ahead in planning and implementing that event. And then also, I mean, the zoo makes a great gift. That's one way that the community can get involved, is just to remember that, you know, whether it is adopting an animal here at the zoo, or it is purchasing a membership as a gift, renewing your membership if perhaps maybe you haven't yet, in just kind of the wake of everything that's going on. All of those things are ways that the community can get involved. And then the corporate community too. You know, as far as sponsoring any of those events, very, very, very family-friendly events, as well as, of course, our Zoo Brew, which has passed for our summer season, but we do have 2 additional ones coming up and more in the works. But there's definitely a sponsorship opportunity for any sort of company, you know, small dollar levels to high. And then a new program that we have where a company or individual or family can sponsor a species here at the zoo, and then in return get some perks, like being able to come here a certain number of times and witness trainings, feeding the animals, getting behind the scenes look, as well as monthly updates from our keepers on those animals. So there's no shortage of ways that the community can get involved. They don't all require any sort of monetary support, but of course many of them do, and we try to provide as many different and unique opportunities for people to do that.
So I've got to ask, you said that you can actually adopt an animal? Tell me more about that. I got to hear about this. What can I adopt? Who can I adopt?
I think you're looking like a tiger guy, right?
Yeah.
No, actually, I'd be more like the ferrets. I really like the small mammals. So
you can adopt education animals. So what that really is we have different levels that you can adopt an animal, and you receive, you know, a certificate. You receive a picture of that animal, and then your name goes up on a sign at that animal exhibit for a full year, depending on what level you choose. I will throw a caveat onto that if that is something that you're doing for your child or your grandchild as a gift or otherwise, definitely make sure that you explain that the animal does not get to come home with you. I had to explain that to my children pretty well. But yes, so it is adopting an animal, but one thing that people of all ages love when they take part in that program is to be able to come to the zoo on any given day and see their name next to one of their favorite animals. So it's a fun little program. Yeah.
Sure, makes perfect sense. So you talked about the issues with fundraising. Tell me what you're doing now going forward with fundraising. I know that we're all aware that a lot of nonprofits are very stressed by COVID. At least you guys have some outdoor venues. That's got to help a little bit. What's going on with the fundraising side, and how's it been going so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that, and just being on, a million different fundraising calls and Zoom meetings and all of that, there's that question of, is it a good time to be asking for money? Is it okay to be asking for money? I will say that that was never a question that we asked here. I was pretty adamant that, yes, it is time to ask for money. We need it. There are so many people out there that have been affected by everything that's gone on, but I will also say that we have absolutely seen so much compassion and so much support from people. Within days, within that first week, we had our kind of urgent appeal solicitation written and ready to go. So we started right away as far as doing an appeal, an urgent appeal to help us. And that was pretty successful. Obviously we didn't raise $1 million because we still need $1 million, but it has been helpful because so many other areas of our budget were affected. So increasing that has been a huge help. But then, so obviously right away we needed to look at events. If we can't have people here, what are we going to do? What does that look like? So we tried to, again, diversify, whether it was the Zoom calls. Our appeals were going out on social media as well. And you get support from that. You do get some critical feedback that way as well. But I think what we tried to do was just be very honest and transparent with the need and what was going on. And if people were able to support us, great. And then our events, clearly COVID hit right at the beginning of our busy season, of our peak season, spring break week. That's when we get going. So the fundraising was definitely affected. We started out our summer events with what was supposed to be Zoo Brew, and Zoo Brew is our #1 fundraiser here at the zoo, believe it or not. Night Eyes brings in more people. Zoo Brew raises the most money out of all of our events. So we did our first Zoo Brew virtually, so that was an interesting experience, June 3rd. But it was also kind of cool. Also, people appreciated the fact that we were going to keep going and didn't let the closure, didn't let COVID stop us. Then when we were finally able to have people here at the zoo at very limited capacity, we started with sip and strolls because we didn't have a sound permit because they weren't offering sound permits or most permits throughout the month of June, not until July. And then once July came and we were able to have a little bit of music here. But I will say that our events have been drastically affected. Zoo Brew did not look like what a typical Zoo Brew should be, and the revenue showed that also. So that was really impacted. So we continue on, and we're evolving our events and adding virtual components and continuing to ask for money and ask for support. We were fortunate to get a PPP loan, which was helpful, but then we are going after as many grants and emergency grants and funding for nonprofits as well.
So let's talk a little bit about moving forward. And maybe you can talk about, you have to have a strategic plan. Everybody has a strategic plan. Tell me about what's the zoo look like in 5 years? I mean, let's talk about something other than COVID for a minute. We look out 5 years, we've got a vaccine, we've got the wheels back on the bus. What do you see the zoo being and looking like in 5 years?
That is a great question, and believe it or not, we just started our strategic planning process in January. So, we'll plan right in the middle of a pandemic as well. But I'm really excited about this process that we've been going through, and we made the decision to continue our planning process even through the pandemic, and we have a committee of board members, and Amanda and I represent our staff on that committee. We've been meeting weekly from the very beginning, going through this planning process to kind of decide, are there things that we need to change, or are there ways that we should, keep going? and what, some of the changes that we've made on the zoo grounds, what needs to stay. So, I'm really proud of our staff and for, flipping our programs and, innovating and recreating new programs, and what of those things do we want to keep, going forward. So that's been kind of the question that we've really been talking about. So right now our planning process is set to end at the beginning of next year. So probably January, February is when we're hoping to have our final plan put together, but we're looking at expanding. And we can expand in 2 different directions, and so we're kind of evaluating which way we go from there. So we're excited about that, and it's a little bit scary, in the midst of a pandemic to say that we want to expand, and in 5 years we want to have a new project in place. But that's the commitment that we are making, and I think it's an important one for the zoo and for our community to do that. We're also looking at, we have 3 capital projects that we started right before the pandemic hit as well, and we are committed to continuing those. And so one of them is our new Holmes Foster Event Center. That one will be completed by the end of September. So we're really excited about that project. It is an event center, which, nowadays events, are a little bit tough to do, but I think this will be an important component to our recovery efforts next year. And we'll be using this private events like weddings and reunions and corporate retreats, as well as public events like our Walk to Save Animals. We'll be having activities up there, and Night Eyes will have activities up there. So it'll be a really nice addition to the zoo, and we're very excited about it. Our other capital project is called Go-Go Plaza, and that is down in the center of the zoo. So by next summer, that center will look a little bit different. We're rebuilding brand new bathrooms and adding a nursing space, which we currently do not have for guests when they come, which is an accommodation for people. And we're also adding a family restroom with an adult changing table. So we're looking at all the different populations and how can we help accommodate people and make them feel welcome when they come to the zoo. And so that's important addition as well. And then it'll include a new snack area and seating and shade space. So we're excited about that going in. We'll be starting construction, knock on wood, hopefully in November with a completion date of spring break next year. So again, another important part of our recovery, but really looking at our guest experiences when people are able to start coming back to the zoo. And then our third project also goes along those same lines. We're building a sensory garden in the center of the zoo. And so this is a project that was started actually with the Community Leadership Program a couple of years ago. And it was one of their projects that we kind of dreamed up and thought about, and we finally have the funding to continue, and that'll be starting this fall as well. And so this is a nice space where people can go if you need a little bit of a quieter area in the zoo. It helps part of our inclusion program for people with sensory needs. When they come to the zoo, you can explore different garden spaces and pathways. So we're very excited to have this one continue as is and be able to have this for our guests to enjoy when people are able to come back to the zoo in full force. And then our other capital expansion projects, those I can't reveal anything quite yet, but just know that we do have plans, and I said we are committed to continuing that expansion progress.
It's just very odd water, to be honest, because we're able to raise money for these capital projects, which clearly you can't touch that money for operations. So it's been a very odd place to be at the zoo as far as getting funding for capital projects, but yet have a huge need for operational dollars. So it feels weird, but we are excited to move forward with the projects.
So let's, as we kind of wrap up here, because we're coming to the end of our time, speaking of getting people back to the zoo, a lot of people, I've got to believe, I perceive that you'd be closing soon, but you don't close during the winter, do you? So tell me, what can a family do or a group do? What can people do this fall as the weather gets a little cooler and maybe the parks aren't quite as much fun to be in? What's the zoo have to offer?
We are open year-round, and so the only days that we close are Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, and New Year's Day. But otherwise, we are open. Now, not all the animals can be outside. We do have some indoor viewing. So what we recommend is people check our website so they can see what the experience will be when they come. But there's a lot of great things to do, and honestly, the fall is a beautiful time to be at the zoo because the weather, like you said, isn't that as hot. It's a little bit nicer to walk around, and honestly, our animals are more active during this time because they're not hot either. And so, they like to be, outside. And some of our animals, like the tigers, for example, they're Amur tigers from the northern parts of Russia, so they enjoy winter more than summer. So this is a great time to see them. But we have a slew of events happening, from our Walk to Save Animals on this Saturday to our Night Eyes events in October. Or you can just come to the zoo any day, especially those families that are homeschooling right now, and sometimes you just need a break away from the computer. Come on out and take a walk around and enjoy nature, enjoy the natural setting. We are outside, so it's a lot easier to social distance from other groups when you are here. So it's a great opportunity. And in the wintertime, we have we're working on, it might be a virtual experience, but we do always welcome a very special guest from the North Pole the first couple of weekends of December. And so we're working on that currently, but we will be doing some different celebrations around the holiday time as well. So something to always kind of keep your eye out on the website. And our staff, I'm really proud of our staff, from, like I said, just being innovative, and just from the day one, just regrouping, evaluating all of our programs and looking at how can we do things differently, and how can we engage with our audiences and keep our education and our conservation mission alive. And so we have lots of programs that we're offering both virtually and in person, like homeschool classes. We have our early childhood classes in full swing. We'll be running a winter camp over winter break, and then a spring break camp, which those are two things that we would normally do. We're looking at other programs that we can re-energize from some of our adult programming. We have book clubs that are online now that people can engage with, both for kids and for adults. And we have a Blank Park Zoo Adult University class as well that we're hosting this year. So there's a lot of different ways to engage with the zoo. And we're, even though it's been a tough year and continues to be a tough year, as it is for many organizations, we're really moving forward with a sense of optimism, and we'll continue to adapt as the circumstances necessitate, but otherwise we're looking forward to bringing people back and kind of in our normal again.
Well, I want to thank you both, Amanda and Ann, for joining me today. Just as a wrap up here, for those who are on the call, we'll be making this available on our website, and we'll also be posting a blog post about this on the website. Thank you for all the people that joined us today, and keep in mind that we have the DSM Forward playbooks and other resources available on our website at dsmpartnership.com/DSM Forward. And if you would, Ann, one more time, the website for the zoo.
It's blakeparkzoo.com.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much, and we'll bring the call to an end now. Good day.
Thank you for having us.